What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the Sweet to the Soul podcast. It's your host, Nevaeh Galan. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this week's episode. Make sure that no matter what platform you're listening on to hit that subscribe button so you get notified whenever I upload a new episode. I'm very excited for this week's topic because it's kind of one of those topics where I have personally gone through it recently and I'm just now kind of coming out from the other side of it. So I love to be able to just share my advice and my experience and wisdom with you guys so that if there's anyone out there listening right now who is kind of going through this experience, that I can just be there to help you and guide you through it. So let's jump right into it. So in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about what happens when God says no. Whether it's no to a relationship, no to a job position, a school, a marriage, to kids. Whatever the case is, what happens when you're kind of just going along with life, doing everything you're supposed to be doing, and God says no. And there's two types of no's that you can get from God that I believe you can get. There's a no, not right now. And then there's just a no. It's finite. Nothing's happening in the situation. And you can handle those in two completely different ways. So I kind of want to touch on that a little bit later in the episode. But any of these no's that you get can be very unexpected, and it can cause some deep-rooted pain and hurt, especially when it comes from God. A no from somebody else, maybe a family member, maybe a friend, a significant other, those kind of no's hurt as well. But when it comes from God, I feel like there's a different type of pain that you relate that to. We all have these ideas in our head that God is supposed to always be providing for our every need and want. He's supposed to be on the same page as us. But what happens when our needs and our wants aren't aligned with what God has in store for us? When this happens, when you get this no from God, do you find yourself becoming distant with Him? Do you find yourself maybe losing faith in Him or in the plans that He has for you? And I think a lot of us, including myself at times, can answer yes to these questions. And I think that just kind of shows that we have based our love and our faith for God and with God to be conditional. We have a conditional love for God. We put all of our trust and our faith in Him only when His plans line up with ours. Only when His timing matches our timing for what we want for our lives. Our love for God cannot be conditional. That does not make you a true believer and true follower of Christ. You cannot base your love and when you have faith, when you're diving deep into that relationship, only when things are going your way. Another thing we as Christians and as believers need to learn is that our relationship with God isn't based on convenience, because God doesn't base His relationship with us on convenience either. God isn't saying, I'm not going to bless her today. There's so many other things to do. Or he doesn't deserve the job promotion this week because I have other things to tend to. Maybe next week. So why is it that this is how we base our relationship with God like? We fit Him into our schedule when we have time to, or when we've checked everything off of our to-do list and then finally the last thing is to spend time with God. Or better yet, maybe we say to ourselves, I'll give God time when He blesses this situation or He blesses this relationship. I'll give God time when I see that He is giving me time. When we think this way and when we have this kind of convenience or conditional relationship with God, we're limiting Him to what He can actually do for us. And also when we start to get these no's from God, things are turning down, they aren't looking up the way we wanted them to, we kind of start to think in our head like, maybe God can't fix this. Maybe God can't do this. Maybe He doesn't have enough power. Maybe it isn't in His hands. And that's when a lot of people start to lose faith in God. And that's why one of the questions I asked was, do you become distant? Do you lose faith? Because at times you can. And I know for me personally, when I was getting a no from God that I did not want to hear, that I did not want to believe, I did start to lose faith, and I did become really, really distant with God, not reading my Bible as much, not spending time in prayer, not spending time speaking to God. I became distant with other people as well. So I think it's really important to know that when you get these no's from God, it's not Him saying, I can't, I don't have the power to, it's not in my hands. It's not Him saying that at all. It's just saying, I have something different for you. And if you're someone who has just recently stepped out into their faith and started following God, I want you to know that you are going to receive so many no's at first. And I don't want that to scare you away, because a lot of people honestly just can't handle that. But the truth is, when you're following God wholeheartedly, Your destination is different from where everyone else in the world is going. The way you're handling situations, the way you're reacting to things, all of this is going to be different. So, of course, there are going to be many chains that you're going to need to break and that God is going to need to break so you can learn to better adapt to this new lifestyle of following Christ. So, when you get all these no's, do not let that turn you away from this at all. Just know that there is a bigger purpose behind it. So probably one of the hardest no's that I received from God was with a previous relationship that I had ended. And during this time in this relationship, when me and this person were together, my relationship with God was not at its highest. There were some highs and some lows, but definitely more lows than highs, unfortunately. There were times where I just did not spend time with God. There were days or weeks that would go by where I did not read my Bible because God was not my priority in that relationship. And obviously because of that, because of the lack of priority with God, because of the lack of spending time with God, my relationship with this person was not succeeding. It was not thriving whatsoever because we did not have God at its center. And then it seemed like whenever I would get my stuff together and I would say, okay, I'm prioritizing God now. I'm putting him first because I want this relationship to work. It seemed like whenever I did that, me and this person drew further apart. And I remember just always asking God, like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm trying to fix my ways. Why is it that the same arguments are coming up? Why isn't this person changing their habits? What is going on? It felt like the more I chased after God, the less I wanted to be with this person. It kind of felt like my eyes were opening to the situations that were going on in the relationship. And I kind of was just like, I don't want this for me anymore. This isn't the life I want. I don't want to keep settling over and over again. And of course, there was that part of me that still wanted it to work. So in my head, I kept asking God, what are you telling me? Are you telling me that we aren't right for each other right now? Or are you telling me that this is just not what's meant for my life? And that was God telling me no. The more I sought after God, the more I wanted to have a relationship with God, I saw him pulling me more towards him, more towards God, and farther away from this other person. And it took a lot of healing and a lot of soul searching to really realize that there are some trials that God is going to make you go through. And I think that's another thing that scares people away, because when you get these no's, it's like, well, God, you didn't have to tell me no, because trust me, if God did not want me to be with this person, he would have never made us cross paths 3 years ago. He would have ended the relationship 3 years ago. But God made me go through that. God made me go through that trial, through that relationship. And God also made me have that no, where he said, no, this is not what I want for you. I need you to end this because I have something better out there for you. And I think another misconception that a lot of believers and a lot of Christians have, that I think I mentioned in another episode, is that when you become a follower of Christ, all of these trials and tribulations are supposed to go away. Everything's supposed to be rainbows and unicorns, and that's not how it is. And nowhere in the Bible does it say that, but it does say in Isaiah 43 verse 2, when you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. Never does God say if you go through deep waters. He says when you go through them, when you go through rivers of difficulty, when you walk through the fire of oppression. God does not guarantee that there will never be trials and tribulations in your life, that there will never be signs of no, not right now, this is not the time. But God does promise that when it happens, because it will, that he will be with you. So God saying no does not mean that he is not with you, that he has disappeared, he is not near you. God is always near you. But it's saying that when God says no to you, to your situation, to whatever you're going through, that he just has something better for you. Something that can be really hard to grasp is that sometimes God is the creator behind your storms, behind your trials and your tribulations, because he wants to give you a wake-up call. Maybe you've been settling for something that is way less than what you deserve, or maybe you're just getting really comfortable in the position and the situation that you are currently in. We all have to get to a point in our lives where we want God's presence and we want his preference over our own desires, over our own needs and our wants. And I'm not saying that you're never going to question what God is doing in your life ever again, but I think you have to come to a place where you can honestly say, I may not know what's going on right now or where I'm headed, but not my will, but yours be done. And sometimes we can take these no's or these situations that we are going through as setbacks. And one thing that my mom told me a while ago was that setbacks are just setups for something else. And I had to think about that for a while, because at times, like, a lot of us think, including myself, that when God says no to something, it's kind of just a waste of time. Like, why did you have me go through the situation if you're just going to tell me no at the end? And a lot of the times we have to kind of switch our vision or the way we're thinking, our point of view, and think, no, this was just a setup for something else, a setup to get you moving, whether it was out of a relationship, out of a job, out of a situation. It was a setup for something better. And sometimes we can just stay so focused on the negative, so focused on the no that God is giving us, that we miss the yes that he is actually telling us. I started reading this book by Elizabeth Thompson. It's called When God Says No, Facing Disappointment and Denial Without Losing Heart, Losing Hope, or Losing Your Head. And it was actually really hard for me to first pick up the book and start reading it, but then also to finish the book. I'm currently still reading this book. It's probably been about 6 months since I started it, and I'm not finished with it yet. And part of that was because, one, I didn't want to pick up the book because at that time when I had gotten it, I was going through that season of God telling me no to a relationship. So I kind of didn't want to hear the truth behind this no. So I didn't want to read it. But once I eventually opened the book and started reading, it was hard for me to face the truth. It was hard for me to know, like, all right, God is saying no to this situation, but he has something better for me. Because when you're going through that situation of denial or disappointment, you don't want to hear the positive stuff that everyone is going to be telling you. And that's just our natural way of helping someone cope through something, is to be positive and tell them, like, you know, you're going to be okay. It takes time. There's someone else out there. There's a better position. And you don't want to hear that at the time. So it was really hard for me to just keep reading through this book. But as I'm getting through it, and even though I am not finished with it yet, I've learned a lot from what this author is telling me. One thing I really love about this book is that it talks about different people in the Bible, and it shows how God said no to his very own disciples. One of the most common situations in the Bible was with Moses, when he sacrificed everything to get to the promised land. Moses spent his life surviving, going through 10 different plagues, wandering for 40 years, just for him to not make it to the promised land. And one thing I just can't wrap my head around is the fact that even though God said no to Moses making it to the promised land, he still had Moses go to the top of a mountain and look over at the promised land. He saw how amazing it was, the beauty it had, and all the people who were able to enjoy it. Moses got to see that, but Moses could never go down there. It was like just such a tease. Like, God, you're telling me no to this situation, but I'm seeing somebody else go through it, and you gave them your yes. You're telling me that I can't have kids, that I can't get married, but all of my friends are having kids. All of my friends are married. Why aren't you giving me your yes? And we cannot compare our situation to somebody else's, because we all have personalized yes and no's. So my yes could be somebody else's no, and vice versa. And that is because we are all on a different path. And even though as believers and as followers of Christ, our destination is the same, but the paths that we take to get there are going to be completely different. And again, I mentioned this at the beginning of the episode, but I think that there are two types of no's that you can get from God. One is a no forever, and the other one is a no for now. So with the no forever, it can be really hard when God gives you this permanent no to a situation that you have been going through for so long. Or maybe it's a relationship that you have been working on, trying to fix for so many years, and God just decides to pull the plug on it forever. It can be really painful. Or maybe it is a no for now. Maybe you're caught between a no and a maybe, where one foot is in the door and the other foot is out. And this at times can be a lot more frustrating because you aren't sure of whether to let go or to hold on to the situation. And I think for both cases, you need to accept what is, but also do not lose hope on what could be, because at the end of the day, God has the choice to decide to change your situation. So whether you're being faced with a permanent no or a no for now, you need to trust God with your life. Part of following after Christ is giving your life up to Him completely, surrendering everything you have and saying, "Here, God, you can have it all. Take my life and do with it as you please." When you're saying this, you're giving up all control of your life. And that is why it was really difficult for me at the beginning of my Christian walk to actually say this and to also believe it at the same time. Because anyone can say this. Anyone can say that I surrender it, I give it all to you. But unless you fully believe it and have faith in it, God will not be able to move your situation and work through everything. And it was hard for me because I love to have control. Like, I can give up some of it, but if I don't have a grasp on something, it's going to be really difficult for me because I always have like these visions in my head of how I want something to work out. And if it doesn't work out that way, I feel so defeated. So it was really hard for me to just be able to give up control. But it wasn't until I fully did that God was able to move and work through my life for my own good. So when you're saying that, you are giving up complete control over your situation, over your life, and you are trusting that whatever God does with it, it will always be in your best interest. Matthew 10 verse 39 says, "If you cling to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find it." And I think the best way to get through these situations where God tells you no is to live by that verse. If you cling to your own life, you will lose it. If you are so wrapped up in your own desires and your own needs and your own wants, you're never going to fulfill the life that you are meant to fulfill. You're never going to reach your actual purpose, what God has for you. But in this verse, he's saying, but if you cling to me, if you cling to your creator, the one who will always stand by you, the one who always knows your best interests, who goes before you, if you cling to me, you will not lose your life. You will gain a life in me. And I think that's just so satisfying to know that no matter what we are going through, if we just give it to the one who controls it all, the one who knows our future, everything will work out for our best interest. So that's my challenge for you guys. If you are going through that season of receiving a no from God, or if you're facing disappointment or denial, I challenge you to give it all to him, to surrender it all to him, because at the end of the day, you don't really have that ultimate power or control to fix the situation. So if you give it all to him and let him work it through, I promise you that even if you do not see the plan now, even if you do not see the purpose or the reasoning behind what you're going through now, I promise you that in the future, you will see that. So that's going to wrap up this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope that I was able to pour into your cup and to just fill your heart with comfort and knowing that even if you are receiving no, facing disappointment or denial, that there is a bigger reason for it, that you have something better in store for you, that there is a yes that goes with your no. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to share this with your friends. Hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to so you get notified whenever I post a new episode. Leave a review, leave a like, and I will see you guys all in the next episode. Peace out.